Hello, welcome to the Winners of Sheffield Podcast. We are here at Radio Sheffield today with BBC Radio Sheffield sport presenter Adam Oxley. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Taking time out of your schedule. Not a problem at all. We're inside the Sheffield headquarters today and basically just getting to know you, your story, your journey and how it all became to being a radio sport presenter. So you want to talk to us from how you started in Sheffield and then we can, stage is yours. Where you go. So where did you grow up in Sheffield?
I grew up in Eckington, right, in north-east Derbyshire, right on the border of Sheffield. I've always felt, though, very fiercely proud of Sheffield and being born there and family being from there and everything else. It's nice to have that Derbyshire angle as well, if I'm being honest, because Derbyshire's a beautiful part of the world too.
Half and half scarf.
Half and half scarf, potentially. I've always felt a bit more Yorkshire than Derbyshire in terms of the cricket. But that's more because my dad was a Yorkshire fan.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, growing up there, brilliant little place, really. My mum's from Norton area, my dad's from Gleadless. Right. So always had that, going to grandparents in those two parts of the world was always good, really good grounding. Loved kind of my sports as a kid, did some gymnastics at Norton and then got into my football, and my dad was a fantastic footballer. Played for Sheffield FC, played for Hallam FC. Okay. He's got a plaque actually up at Hallam.
Has he, right?
Sandygate.
Okay.
Passed away from prostate cancer in 2019, and the club actually had a couple of people go to the funeral.
Oh, brilliant!
So he's got a plaque up at the world's oldest football ground, which is amazing. Yeah, so yeah, he was amazingly inspirational kind of figure for me. Growing up, learnt loads off him. Went to Eckington Comprehensive School, great grounding. I kind of always feel that if you get a chance to go to a school like that, it gives you a bit of everything. Yeah. Good school, not taking anything away from it, but you've got a real mixed people there, real mixed characters, so it kind of set you up for the real world in a way. Yeah. Went through sixth form there, went to Sheffield University, did journalism there. Yeah. Brilliant, really enjoyed my time there. While I was there, managed to work and do some voluntary experience at Hallam FM, which sadly is no longer around in its
renamed, hasn't it?
Yeah, so renamed, which is a real shame. There's been some brilliant people that came through that route.
Yeah, and the rename, because I'm just assuming it was just an acquisition or a rename. Is it because most of the people are still there, are they?
No, a lot of people are gone now. I think literally it was Big John at breakfast was pretty much the last kind of standing element to it, which is a real shame. Yeah. Because at the time when I was there, they had a sports show on a Saturday that rivaled Radio Sheffield, whereas now it very much is Radio Sheffield's all there is really when it comes to radio and sport in the area.
So is it still Bauer Media then?
Yeah, I think over the whole thing it is. Yeah. I think, is it Greatest Hits now?
Something like it.
So, but very proud to work there at the time. Yeah. Through doing the degree, University of Sheffield, managed to get a nod to come here and to initially do some kind of experience helping out the sports team here on a Saturday. So I banged on about sport at university for 3 years and did my Hallam stuff. So got here. And did that alongside a job at South Yorkshire Police for 13 years before becoming full-time in 2018. So lots of links to the city, lots of pride in the city, and now to do this on a daily basis is just silly. If I'm being honest, it's an amazing job.
Do you pinch yourself in the mornings when you come here? Yeah.
You have to. I try not to lose that at any point. But equally, there are days when you'll get bogged down in things, you'll get a little frustrated. Everybody gets frustrated with various aspects of the job, but ultimately you just sit there and go, "Oh, this is nuts." You know, and the perspective of doing a proper job for years with the cops to then do this really helps because you remind yourself of all the effort, all those 6-day weeks, all those weeknights travelling to the other end of the country to then get up the next day to go and work for the cops and then do that again. Well, at least now I get an extra day off in the week and get to spend a bit of time with the family after 13 years of doing that.
So you're doing the part-time work at Hallam while you're at university.
Yep.
Yeah. How did that help you in your coursework and your future, so to speak?
Amazingly, just to kind of get that experience, and that it's another example, like people say, of just chance your arm with stuff. You know, I sent my mum encouraged me to send a few emails off some local organisations, and Hallam came back and said, we can't give you any news shifts, but the sports team would like some help on a Saturday. I was like, oh, well, that sounds horrendous. Let's go and do that for a bit. But yeah, it was brilliant. I got to look at different editing bits behind the scenes. I got to work with some reporters that have been doing it for years and learn from them, do some first bits on air, working with the phone-ins, reading some scores, reading some sports bulletins, doing my first game right at the end of it, which was Rotherham Brighton at Millmore in 2005, so 20 years ago now, which seems like 2 seconds ago, but it's not. So yeah, it just gave a bit of a grounding, and then it helped because like when I was on my course, they were obviously pleased that you got some work experience in the industry, and that's what they were pushing for. So for me to have that as a constant through part of my time in sixth form and then all the way through my university degree was brilliant. You know, really good focus, and really firmed up in my head what I wanted to do, and that was something that I really wanted to do preferably on a full-time basis, and thankfully eventually got there.
I would talk about in the previous episodes a switch about where people are in their jobs now and they get that deciding moment, and we just discussed it there. I take it when you finished the degree and you've done the part-time work, that was it. That's the way forward.
I suppose the switch for me was when I made the decision to leave the cops and do this on a full-time basis, because luckily everything that I'd thought through my teenage years, through sixth form, through university, it kind of just reaffirmed my belief that wouldn't it be brilliant if I could work in sport and in broadcasting as a job, because I enjoyed it. And I think the ultimate goal anyone wants is to enjoy what they do on a week.
Who was your sort of hero commentator then, or presenter when you were a kid? Who was the one?
Well, the original one was Trevor McDonald from a newsreader perspective, just as a character. Just loved the way he delivered it. I just loved everything. It just seemed simple. I think the best presenters make everything seem really straightforward and easy. So, originally John Motson. Again, big character. You know, you want people to kind of bring the game to life, and I really thought he did that. But over the years, like I've always liked Gary Lineker as a really presenter. Really good. Again, just makes everything seem effortless, and you know it's not, because there's so much going on.
The current is Adam McCoist. But if you
could summarise them, McCoist
choose a commentator for any game, for me, I'd have Adam McCoist, because he sort of, it just makes the game so much more exciting to watch.
But it's all the different aspects to it. It's the tactical analysis he brings, but also the fact that he makes it fun, makes it relatable. There's a good relationship between him and the commentator. You've got some fantastic commentators like Guy Mowbray on the BBC. I've always liked Guy. I think he's really good. Peter Drury, I know he splits opinions now on sport, on Sky Sports, but some of his use of words is fantastic. I love Shearer now. I think Alan Shearer's gone from being a fantastic studio pundit, and he still is, but he's actually a fantastic summariser as well. But there's all these different roles within my world. So you've got the presenting, then you've got the commentating, then you've got your summarising, and reporting compared to commentating is different as well, because you obviously have a bit of time to put your thoughts together, whereas when you're commentating, it's all live, and that's the buzz. That's the part of the job that I absolutely love, because it's the buzz of the live game. So like whether it's Sheffield United last night in the playoffs or Chesterfield at the weekend, you get one shot at it. You do your research, you do your prep, you do all this, but when the game's on, you get one shot at it.
It's funny actually, I don't watch Match of the Day anymore, but you can almost tell, and I might be wrong with this, but I'm 99% sure, but you can almost tell that they've done the commentary retrospectively for Match of the Day, because they'll reference stuff that later on comes into play in this sort of thing.
I think, not giving away too many trade secrets, I think the vast majority is live. There might be the odd, maybe cutaway shot in the stands or something else that they'll get them to voice afterwards, just for continuity purposes. But the majority of it will be live. I mean, some of the highlight shows that you'll see on other channels, they do get kind of commentary worked over the top. But I think from Match of the Day perspective, you do get the full shebang of producers and everything else with you. So
I was always mortified when I was young, when I used to watch football in Italia. I always used to think they were in the Italian grounds, but they were just in a studio in London doing it.
Yeah, a lot's now studio based. And we're very lucky that The only time I've done studio-based stuff here is when there was COVID. So actually we did games from the room behind us there.
Right, did you?
Yeah, off the big screen.
Right.
So whether that was the club's iFollow services, internet services, or whether it was one of the TV channels, that's how for 2 months, what was that? Was that early 2021? Yeah, well, it was 2020 when it happened, but it was the second wave in early 2021 where we weren't allowed to travel. So we could do the home games because they were in our part of the away games, we couldn't. So I can remember doing a game with Mark Crossley in there, a game with Ronnie Moore in there, sat with the headphones on and everything else. It was just weird. Yeah. It was very weird.
They kind of broke up the gang, but for me, on a sort of Saturday, Super Saturday, watching Jeff and the boys, that was often more exciting and interesting than the game, to be fair. I think it's sort of, it all got broken up a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, whenever your shows and your successful commentary teams and everything else, it's always those relationships and the characters and the personalities, which is why it's nice with us 3 full-timers, me, Andy and Rob, in that people get to know us a bit when we're presenting the shows in the week. So there's a bit of that relatability. A lot of our summarisers we use on a regular basis. Again, you get to know them as characters, and people then tune in for them and kind of access them. So we've tried to mix the show up a bit in the last couple of years and get us, like 2 of us doing a show more regularly now, so we can have a little bit more conversation, discussion, camaraderie, liven it up a bit. The heart of it's always going to be the callers. And Football Heaven and Praise Over Rumble has always been known for those characters, those callers that ring in. But it's an amazing show to work on, as we do.
Explain how you got into here then, Adam. How did you get into Radio Sheffield at full time, where you are currently now?
Yeah, so initially it was I got a thanks F Bennett who used to work here for contacting the university and wanting a recommendation to work with the sports team back in 2005, and thankfully that was my in. Yeah. So I did a year behind the scenes, doing some editing, doing some kind of scores reading and messages reading. Paul Walker, who was the sports editor at that point, threw me 5 or 6 games out on the roads just to see how I did. Thankfully I did alright. At the end of the first year they gave me the Doncaster Rovers gig. So I did Doncaster Rovers for 2 years. And then got switched to Barnsley for nearly a decade. And essentially for 13 years, 2005 to 2018, I spent the Monday to Friday doing the police, which largely was in a PR role after I'd done a couple of years in admin. Yeah. So on call, supporting investigations, doing some social media, doing website stuff, a whole round of communication stuff in there. And then in 2018, board came up here, an opportunity to become full-time. I'd gone for it once, didn't get it, which was a blow, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. And I kind of thought that the opportunity had gone. Yeah. I really thought the opportunity had gone at that point, but thankfully when the opportunity came back up again, stars aligned a little bit, and it was a big decision because I took a pay drop to come here at this time, which for me personally was a huge decision, but I would have made that decision time and time again, I'm not going to lie, because this was always the dream, to work on this on a full-time basis, day to day. It was always the dream to do it, and I'm so glad I did it, because I now get to do this on a week-to-week basis.
How does, we talked about it briefly before, but how does the preparation go to, say, for instance, I've always wondered, if you get, say, we've discussed it off camera, but you get Plymouth away on a Wednesday night. What's the preparation that goes into that, and how do you balance it up between your co-presenters and commentators? And talk us through that process, because it's...
First thing to say is everyone's different, so there's no kind of commentator school, there's no Bible of this is how you do a game, this is the preparation that you do, this is how you structure your notes, if you need notes, this is how you call X, Y and Z. There's kind of ways of doing it that the best people have done that have become ways that people have done it, but that's not necessarily kind of like it has to be done that way. Everyone has their own style. So for me, on average of a game, I'll put like between 1 and 2 hours prepping. I'll look at, and that's kind of off your own bat. You know, if you want to do that, you can. If you don't, you don't. You know, we've got a whole variety of approaches.
Turn up on winging.
Well, no. So I mean, some people prefer to look up some stats beforehand, have it in the head, have the team sheet there and get immersed in the game. Other people have their entire sheets of pen picks of every single player and every single scenario. I do mine a little bit different to everyone else. So I thought I have an A4 piece of paper that's folded in half that I keep in my hand. I'll have one team on one side, the other on the other side. I'll have some stats underneath from like the previous game, so I can go, oh right, that was the team then. And I'll have a few kind of head-to-head notes, the other games that are going on, some stats about the managers, some stuff about the tables and the form, and have that there. And the rest of my pad will be where I make my notes on the incidents in the game, so I can keep track of what's happening. I've just found that that's the most concise way I can do it, because you never know at a ground whether you can have loads of space or no space.
Yeah.
So to have that kind of one pad and then that in your hand, I've always found that as a really useful way of doing it.
Have you ever lost your piece of paper or damaged it?
It's flown off in the wind occasionally, and you kind of have to adapt.
Just have to roll with the punches.
You have to roll with the punches, obviously, being live. But I just find that the crucial thing at the end of it is you've got to call the game. You know, ultimately on radio, we're the eyes and ears of people listening. So your principal role is to make sure that people at home know what's happening. Everything else is kind of adding to it. And then as well as that, you've got to know why it matters. Every game there is, no matter if it's a Tuesday night, League Cup, seemingly nothing on the game, there's always something. Whether it's a player, a manager, a head-to-head, or there's always a story behind it.
Yeah.
And it's about knowing that, so that when that goal goes in, or when you're doing your reports at full time or whatever, you can put the context on it.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, it's easy when it's a playoff final because it's, Sheffield United scored and they're on their way to Wembley, they're promoted to the Premier, that's the story. But it's like, so what's that for Rotherham at Exeter on a cold Tuesday night in February? So that's part of it, it's knowing all your different angles. Yeah. You know, it could be a player's 10th goal of the season, could be that he scored against his former club, or there's loads of different aspects to it, but it's kind of bringing that out and working out why does it matter, why is it relevant, and making sure that you're across it. You don't get it right, occasionally because it's live, and there's a whole melee of people in the box, you don't know who scored. So you'll sometimes hear, let's say, Sheffield United have scored, there's a real melee of bodies in the box, the players wheel away to the far side. You're buying yourself a bit of time because you wait to say which player's running away, who are the players celebrating around. Yeah. You might get a replay at some ground somewhere, but you just have to kind of try and wing it the best you can. Yeah. So the beauty of it being radio rather than TV is that people can't see it. So if you get a player wrong, but at least if you sound convincing, then you get away with it for a minute. Unfortunately, then when people watch it back on the TV later, I'm sure that commentator said it was
somebody off took Bucky's with wrong.
Adam said he scored.
Look, it is like somebody punching you in the stomach when you get one of them. It doesn't happen too often.
Famously, Chris Kamara had it, didn't he?
I don't know, Jeff.
Really didn't
I don't know. Yeah, he was at an awards do recently, the Sheffield Star Awards do. He's such a fantastic guy. Obviously,
he's getting better as well.
He is. He's obviously had his health issues and his speech has been affected, but he stood up on stage. His gags were brilliant, and he's just a brilliant footballer.
Camera showed him at Bramall Lane last night as well. I think he was there.
Yeah, I think he was. There were a few people there. Harry Maguire was there as well.
On his phone all game. Every time the camera was on, he was just on the phone. I think
the modern football.
Yeah, I think Andy Inchcliffe even went. It's nice to know he's interested in the game. But how do you feel like? I was going to say, how did you feel when you first went live, knowing you're doing your first ever game on national radio? What goes through your head then? Are you getting nervous? Or?
I get nervous. I
still get nervous.
I still get nervous now.
Yeah.
Look, I think because the amount you do it, you get used to it. I don't think there'll ever be a time when I don't get those butterflies going into a game because you want to do a good job. You want to call the right moments. You want to be across it. You don't want it to be boring. You want to bring in the right people and reference the right things and everything else. So there's always going to be those nerves. For me, when I took this job full time in 2018, the thing that I hadn't done was much presenting. So I hadn't hosted phone-ins. I'd done games. I'd interviewed managers. I'd shown that I could do that. But it was a lot of the presenting side of it that I hadn't done. So that was in part what they, not a gamble, but they trusted and obviously saw enough in me to think I could do it. So the first time I did Football Heaven 6 till 7 and those phone lines opened and you don't know who's going to call, you don't know how many people are going to call, You don't know what they're going to say. You've got to be prepared for anything. Because they might say something stupid, they might swear, they might say something libelous, you know, you might have to deal with something like that. So you've got all these things running through your head when a show's going on. And yeah, it's probably taken a good few years, and I've got to admit, it's still the part of like what I do that I'm still working on as best as I can to get better at. But there's always that nerves, and you were just, oh my god, my stomach was doing cartwheels. That first kind of 6 months at least, first couple of years of doing the phoning, your stomach's doing cartwheels. You just want to get it right. I mean, it's changed a little bit now, because like I said, when two of us do it, you can have a little bit of banter, and there's people, obviously, when you can mix in callers, you can mix in some audio, we try and make it quite a lively show. But there's some people that don't get nervous, which is great for them. I've always been one of those people with kind of my mental health and anxiety and other things that I've still got that in the back of my head that, okay, what can go wrong as opposed to what can go right is kind of my default position in life. But that's not necessarily sexual.
There's a lot of stuff around here. We'll move off the sports stuff in a minute, but there's a lot of stuff here about social media and digital and all that. How is the impact on social media having an effect now on the radio and sports coverage especially?
Huge. It's been a game changer for us. Originally because it changed how we report on games. So we can then get team news, we can get colour, we can get photos, we can get videos, we can get all this stuff out on social media that we didn't used to before. You know, the radio at one point was the go-to place for your manager interviews, for your discussion, for your team news. It's not anymore. You know, like we used to, our build-up to the games used to have a lot of the manager interviews in it. Doesn't anymore, because people get that. They'll watch it live on YouTube from the shows, they'll listen to it on sounds, they'll watch the videos that we put out on social media now. So by the time game day comes, people have seen a lot of it. It's one of the reasons we introduced music into our pre-show coverage. Not many shows, not many local radio stations use music now. Whereas we thought, actually, let's make it more entertaining. Let's, you know, if a manager interview is going out, then only one club's fans are going to be interested in that. Whereas actually, you play some music, anybody can listen into that. And we mix it up with live chat with our reporters. You know, it's local, a lot of local artists, a lot of music that you get at a football ground, and just trying to create a better product. But the social and digital aspect of it's now huge. It's as important, if not more important, than what we do on the radio. Because the interviews that we do, they'll travel around the Radio Sheffield and the Football Heaven, X and Instagram, Facebook, all out there. We video as many post-match interviews and pre-match interviews now. It just adds so much more context. It brings everything to life. And there's loads of different ways it's developing. From next season, every single local club is going to have their own area of BBC Sounds, which they've not had before. So if you're a Barnsley fan, you'll be able to go and search Barnsley, you'll get all your Barnsley content in one place. Something we've been crying out for years, but we've now got it. There's already beefed up pages on the BBC Sport website. You know, we've started as part of time of principally do radio, but I now write pieces for the BBC Sport website. As part of my job. I also do social and digital media as part of my job. You'll do bits on camera every now and again at the ground. So no longer is it just a case of turn up and do the radio.
Make the nerves go even higher, does it?
It does, yeah. But I think principally because you're live, because most of the stuff we do is live anyway, whether it's the games or the shows. That's that anyway. The fact it's visualised does add another element to it, but equally it's made the job more fun. You know, it's always been fun, but you've got all these different aspects to it now. And you know, if you get a brilliant interview after a game and you put something out and then it goes viral on social media, you know, it skyrockets, you know, people listening to your interviews on BBC Sounds and stuff like that. It's brilliant because there's so much you can get in body language, visually, that you just don't, you know, radio's impactful on its own because you can kind of shut out everything, just listen to what people are saying. Then equally, on the flip side of that, when you can, sometimes a manager doesn't say much in terms of what they're saying, but you can see how their body language is, you can see what's in their face. We've done interviews with Chris Wilder this season. There was one before the season at Huddersfield when things were difficult at the start of last year that he referenced himself, that he was a bit unshaven, he looked tired, it was a difficult summer, and us seeing kind of how much it was all affecting him, gave an added layer to it.
Because I mean, I take it must help you personally as well, because you're developing skills as well.
Absolutely.
Do you listen to yourself back anyway, as a matter of course?
I don't, as a matter of course. Occasionally I will do. I mean, look, you sometimes listen back to your goal commentary bits, because they're the bits that go on social media and get used for trails and highlights, and you want to get them right. You want to get them right and call your big moments, which goes back to the knowing your stories, knowing all that kind of stuff. I do bits of it. Sometimes I listen back to some of the shows. Depends if we've had a big guest or we've had a big show or something else, and we're looking to put something out. And now, because we're the first BBC local radio station in the country that's had a visualised studio.
All right.
So, like you'll see nationally, our studio has got cameras in it, which has enabled us to share clips from our shows and share interviews with people.
I keep seeing the Toby Foster.
Yeah, that really, we've had that as a pilot. So we've been very lucky to bring that to life, and for us as a sports team, that's really helped get the show out, produce some really interesting content, show some videos of some of the calls that we've had.
Yeah, I've seen one that's going around recently about John, 60 years seem to get older, and you're just listening to it.
Absolutely. And there is something, even when you can see it's a caller and there's the presenter in the studio kind of nodding along, there's just something that visual aspect does to it. But that's, over the last few years, is very new. If you'd have said that we'd have been doing
that's
years ago.
99% of the reels that I see on social media are either that or podcasts.
Yeah.
And it's that. I mean, somebody was asking me about how the podcast's going, and I was like, it's going all right. We've had some good guests, we've had some good coverage, but you're vying with people's attention.
Absolutely.
And the arrogance or the optimism of trying to get people to spend an hour of their time listening to you when people have just got attention spans of like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, so the market's getting harder.
So I think we need to jump, a little bit like you have done, we need to jump on that and start sharing the sort of 15, 20 second reels of, your answers to certain questions rather than...
It all grows, it's all got to start from somewhere. It's only the fact that we've got established brands in football heaven and praise or grumble, we've got established characters in the callers and in us as presenters, and we know there's an audience there, so you've got to have all that base, but then it is about capitalising it, and we're lucky that there's a lot of interest in football, and we've got a really good team and put out a lot of good stuff, I would argue.
I'm going to park the Radio Adam part now.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about Adam Oxley the person, because Adam, I've read, I've been reading profile, etc., and research for shows and stuff like that. And I'm going to let you talk about it, because the work you do for prostate cancer talks about how that started you on, and then the amount of runs and chariot stuff you're doing for that. I was like, the amount of stuff you did in a year, I was like, wow, I imagine you walking that, the work you've done. But talk us through about the work you're doing for prostate cancer and how it's come about. I know you spoke briefly about your dad, but just from there, really, that journey for yourself.
Yeah,
fantastic work.
So, like I said, my dad passed away in 2019. So it was about 16 months from the point at which we learned he got prostate cancer to when he passed away. We hoped that he'd get more, but unfortunately it spread too far. He was already at stage 4, which is anybody who's knows anybody who's gone through cancer, you're fighting a bit of a losing battle if you get to that point and it spread. So seeing him go downhill and seeing him pass away at Ashgate Hospice was horrendous, and I don't wish that on anyone, if I'm being honest. You still miss him to this day, but that in itself, part of my way of dealing with stuff is to try and do something positive with it, and the charity work, I've always wanted to do something like that. So the first few charity events I did with my dad's best mate who died of prostate cancer, I did a big walk from Filey to Sheffield originally, 90 miles over 3 days. And my dad's other best mate died of bowel cancer. So I did a big walk for a load of places that meant a lot to him, which was 172 miles over 10 days in multiple parts of the country. We started off on the Cornish coast, we went up and did Hadrian's Wall, then came back down to Sheffield. So we did that one. I did a mental health walk for Mind, which was between all the clubs in South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire when I came here. Then we did the Rounders World Record after my dad passed away for Ashgate Hospice, where he passed away. because he was an England Rounders player, my dad.
Oh, right, okay.
So he was an amazing Rounders player, won all the national championships and everything. So I cooked up the idea that we do a walk, of course, around all this place in Sheffield. So we did 66 miles over 2 days. And then the next weekend, we managed to book the English Institute of Sport and set the Guinness World Record for the longest Rounders match ever.
I've got here Guinness World Record holder. I didn't know what it was for though.
Yeah, so
how long was that?
24 and a half hours we did non-stop at the English Institute of Sport. Nobody had ever done it, but we got in touch with Guinness and said, right, what do we have to do to set this world record? And they said 24 hours. You would not.
A friend and I, we did a 48-hour snooker marathon. We did it twice. So the first time we did it, we just contacted. It was quite funny actually because at the time Ray Stubbs worked for the BBC.
Okay.
And I just you knew the format for people's email addresses, so I just put Ray Stubbs at BBC and emailed him, and I got an out of office saying, I'm currently on holiday in Cyprus or whatever. If he calls urgent, here's my number. So I thought, well, I'll leave him to have his holiday. And then a week or two later, I thought I'll ring him up, asked him if he fancied coming on and starting it for us. And he did. His daughter actually went to Hallam, I think. And then a year after that, Paul Hunter passed away. So I emailed Ray Stubbs and sort of said, we're happy to do it again if you want. And then he organised it, so we started and finished it in
Brilliant.
in 2006. Raised about 20 grand.
Oh, amazing! But this is it. They're so rewarding to do. Yeah. I think that's why I do it, because in part it's kind of channeling that grief and the horrible aspects of it, and doing something positive out of it, and doing something for the various charities. So I mean, it's an experience that was just amazing. You know, it was absolutely knackering, and I smashed my finger up in the first hour. So I did 23 and a half hours with my fingers strapped up, which was horrible.
I was going to say this.
It was on the athletics
snooker
marathon. Went down trying to catch a
ball.
Yeah.
Doing the snooker marathon, I don't know whether you've ever seen players wear like a thumb and two. It's like a glove that goes over your front two fingers and your thumb. I've always been like, what's all that about? But like, just putting your hand on and off the clock, or
you can imagine
the red raw, like your hands are red raw.
Over such a period of time, yeah.
I've just done Leeds Marathon in memory of my dad. I lost my dad a few years ago, and decided no more marathons, but me and a chap we're organising at the minute a 24-hour paddle.
Brilliant.
For September.
Oh,
so I don't know how that's going to. I don't think it'll just be the two of us. I think we'll be taking people on and stuff like that.
Oh, well, as you all know, like the requirements from Guinness are many and varied, and we had to record the whole thing. You know, have to submit loads of evidence to Guinness. There's loads of it's not a case of you just do it and then let them know you've done it and then you get your certificate. There's a heck of a lot we had to have witnesses, we had to have logbooks, so there's a lot of admin that goes into it, but it was definitely worth it. And then of course there's all the running stuff, which you already mentioned. So Prostate United, which is the annual running challenge, was started by two lads at Rotherham United, Stephen Gilpin and Ross Burberry. They started off because Stephen's granddad had passed away through prostate cancer, and they started doing 10k a day during November. Just them two at Rotherham. Within 7 years, it's now got over 60 football clubs doing it. It's raised £1 million because it's just ballooned now. It's now you can walk, cycle or run. You can do 3k, 5k, 10k. It's changed to October because that fits in with the wider charity. And it's gone from a few local football clubs in our part of the world to across the piece. And they're hoping this year to try and raise £500,000 this year alone when they do it in October. So for me, I wasn't a runner. My dad would laugh now because I'd never done any kind of running. I'd always done football. I'd always been slightly overweight, but always okay. Whereas I've found that running allows me to eat, and I love my food. It's the only thing that kind of keeps the weight off. Whatever motivates you, that's my motivation. I like my food, so if I like my food, I've got to run. So now I make sure I run on a regular basis. I've done 4 Prostate Uniteds now myself. I did 10k a day last October for the first time, which was...
So that's 10k a day every day?
Yeah. So I've done 5k a day for the first 3 years, which was hard enough. Roped in a few of the guys from here to do it. we talk about it on air because obviously all the local football clubs go into it. We get a couple of callers ringing up telling their stories. And then last year I kind of thought, I've got to push it for 10k.
So how long was that for? A month?
So October, every day in October, 10k every day, 310k. So I did a little bit more.
What's that in miles then?
That's 200 odd miles.
Yeah. Wow. So I've just done 600, just over 600 miles in the last 12 months. So yeah, that's some going on.
That's an effort, that, Adam.
It's hard, and that's the point of the challenge. That's partly why it's so rewarding. But also, there's loads of other people at all these other clubs that are doing it. Yeah. There's a nice little community that's come out on social media and stuff else. And because of my story and my connections with my dad, I've been to a couple of events now with Prostate Cancer UK. We visited a cancer lab at Nottingham Uni last summer to see what they're doing with the money. And there were a couple of Grant McCann, the Doncaster manager, and a few other people because he's done a lot of fundraising. He does the challenge. Went down just to kind of see about that, and that was incredible. It's mind blowing what they're doing and the amount of money it takes to do it. But the challenge is going from strength to strength, and it's brilliant to see it. Unfortunately, now I can't really not do it now. Yeah. So it'll I'm in. So it'll be how differently I can do it. So I've got a couple of ideas for this October, but. It'll be 10k a day again in October.
There's the Walking Brilliant charity as well, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
For mental health, I noticed you're part of that as well.
Yeah. So mental health wise, I had 2 spells off work when I was at the cops due to anxiety and work related stress. Essentially things got a bit too much for me. Tried to take on a bit too much. Got into a tough spot where I was just being unproductive. I was starting to be scared of going into work. I'd be hiding in the toilets at work. I'd go outside in the car and be crying, and it just got to a point where a mate of mine at work pulled me to one side and said, "You're not right," and I'll be forever grateful to her for doing it. Ended up at occupational health there. Ended up doing some counselling. Ended up having between 6 weeks and 3 months off in a various phased kind of approach, and it happened twice. So I think one of the things with mental health is it's you've got to properly wrap your head around what's happening and everything else. And the first time I thought it was something that could get fixed, and mental health isn't something that you can fix. You've got to, in my experience, work out what works for you, work out how you can look after your mind, work out what are the processes that you need to do. And it took me probably a collective journey of about 5 years up until I switched jobs to come here to really understand myself and to get myself in a place where I can deal with the anxiety. I'm still on anxiety related meds now. Never been ashamed to say that because it just helps with the chemical imbalance and helps me to stay on the straight and narrow. And clearly in the job that I do now, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety with it. So it's one of those where you need to be on top of it, but that's in essence because I did some games with Mark Cross during lockdown. He and a few other ex-pros had started doing some walks and started doing some blogging on social media about what they're doing. Because I've done some games with Mark, started going along to events and supporting them, and since then I've done some charity football matches, charity cricket matches. I went to them when they did the Three Peaks, National Three Peaks, and did that with them. And now they do some, last man standing stuff, some charity days and golf days that you just go along and support, because it's, again, that's me trying to do something positive out of adversity, and it's the way I've kind of dealt with it. So doing stuff like that really helps. Just going back
to your sort of, when you were going through those mental health struggles, did you find it easy talking to people about it?
Not that time.
The reason why I asked that is because I went through something similar, and it was only when I started talking to other people, because I just felt at the time like there's something wrong with me, and sort of like everyone else is fine, everyone else is normal, and I'm just sort of like. But it was only when I started talking to people more on a one-on-one basis that I realised how many people were affected by it, and that's why I asked the question, because I think the best thing is to talk to people, certainly people you can trust, because it's at that point that you kind of realise, oh, they've had something, you just don't know about it kind of thing, or they've had, that they've gone through something.
Everything you've just said chimes absolutely bang on. I think the first time you go through a dip or what have you, everybody has some aspects of mental health, and everybody will have some aspects of anxiety, and a lot of people can cope with it and have ways of dealing with it. It never gets that far. But when you kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole, as I understand from the way you're talking, but I've been down and many people have been down that rabbit hole, it's difficult to get out of it. And you do think it's just you. And you do think you can't get out of it. Nobody's dealing with that. So it was only after having conversations with professionals, with other people, that you start getting your head around it. But it was probably only after the second time that I had some struggles at work and ended up being off again.
Did you get referred to the course that they do at the St Paul's Church?
No, I didn't. No, but one of the great things about working for a public sector and like the police is that they've got their own occupational health team, and they've got some counselling that they could offer there. There was stuff that they referred to me, like I said, I went to the doctors and all that kind of thing. But in essence, once I'd become a bit more comfortable with talking about it, it really helped. And now since then I've done a school tour with the BBC where I've gone and shared my story with a load of school kids. I've done mental health specials on Football Heaven, and I will now look for opportunities, a little bit like we're doing now, to talk about it. Yeah. But you can only talk about it when you're in a place to talk about it. And if it ever got to a point where I felt like I was struggling, then I'd take myself back again and hope that I've got the tools in place now to do that. You know, the right family tools, the right signs of you're working too hard, you're starting to put a bit too much pressure on yourself, you're taking a little bit too much on, you're not verbalising all those things.
That's the thing, I've gone through it, and I hope I'll never be certainly like I was the first time round, because it was just sort of, I felt like I was losing my marbles, I couldn't sleep, and then it was sort of like, I think sleep deprivation on itself, on its own, can just sort of cause all of these issues. But because it was that vicious circle, couldn't sleep properly and all the rest of it. And I don't think I'll ever be like that again, or pray I won't. But you do see, I do feel myself slipping into it from time to time. Yeah. I'm assuming that
100%.
You're the same.
There's definitely weeks. I catastrophise a lot. I will get worried about things happening. Overthinking, all that is definitely the anxiety, mental health elements that I've had. So I'll chime with all that. If there's ever a meeting that's happening at work, you're not sure what's going to be the outcome, you'll play through everything. If you're going into a show, it'll be all those worst case scenarios that you'll play through. It's not a bad thing to an extent, as long as you're alright with it. So you can play through worst case and how you deal with it. But equally, it does take an effort to, like I said, I am a positive person. I try and be confident, but that's kind of battling against myself in doing that and the inner side of it. But I think for anybody, people, you've got to spend a bit of time with your own head and get to know yourself. There's no rights or wrongs. There's no one size fits all approach to the way to deal with it. And some people will deal with it everybody will have a different way of dealing with it.
I was going to say, because it must be challenging for you, because if you've got your own, you've got your own issues yourself, and then football has a big part on people's mental health, doesn't it? Yep. And then you're hosting a phone-in show weekly, where these people are ringing up, and they're hearing this, and you can hear it in the voices, how it's affecting them big time, the state of their club. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans who are going to Hallam back at the minute, but I'm an Everton fan. I know they're playing the sun outside, so it affects them. How do you handle that as well? Because there are some calls that let's be honest, they go deep, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and that's a bit of experience, a bit thinking through what kind of things people can ring up with. It's listening. I mean, a lot of the times when people ring up, the best thing to do is give them a platform. There's obviously stuff they want to say. You can have a good disagreement, bit of back and forth with maybe some regulars that you know a bit better. If somebody rings up and they clearly got something to say, let them talk.
Yeah. I think sometimes as well, I don't know about you, but I find it easy, and there's a question in there somewhere, but because it's someone else's stress, it's like if you're scared of heights or scared of going on a plane and you get on a plane and somebody else is way worse than you, all of a sudden it just brings you down.
Yeah, of course it does.
So I'm assuming it's quite therapeutic to some extent to see that other people, to help other people.
Definitely. And you've got to be careful with who you surround yourself with as well, haven't you? Because if you've got too many negative people in your life that are dragging you down, it can really affect you. But totally get with that. But it's one of those things. Whenever I'm able to, I want to talk about it now, and kind of proud of what I've been managed to achieve through it. And it's a part of me. It's not something that I've dealt with. It's something that is still a part of me, and as long as it's a part of me and I'm dealing with it, then I don't think it'll kind of rear its head again.
I was just going to quickly ask you, we talked about it earlier, but how do you see the future sports coverage going with all the social media and all that? Are people still going to tune into local radio stations, or are they just going to digital platforms and things
It's
like
a very good question.
Yeah.
It's a very good question. One, of course, that as you'd imagine, we've discussed quite a lot.
Yeah.
As a team and as a station. I think there's still a role for radio in its current format for some years to come, whether that's 5 or 10 years or what have you, who knows. What we do get now is like the phone-ins, the commentaries and everything else drives a lot of the other content. So a lot of the content we get from social media will be from the interviews that we do, will be from the shows that we do. The camera all works together. And for us now, it's about growing our presence on the BBC Sport website. It's about growing all those club areas on BBC Sounds. So you kind of got to adapt. This last year we've done our first 2 streamed football heavens on the BBC Sport website. So we had Steel City Derby specials that have been filmed in our studio upstairs and broadcast live online,
Right.
which is a step forward that nobody else has done. So gradually, the job that I walked into in 2018 compared to now is a different job, and it will continue to evolve year on year. And I think as long as we go with it, that's going to be fine. But how many more years there'll be football heaven, how many more years there'll be radio commentaries, how many more years, who knows? It may be that radio gets switched off and all these become online platforms that go on something like YouTube or through the website or through BBC Sounds.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those where, as a job, it's got to be one of the safest, hasn't it? The kind of reporting on sport, because you don't want an AI bot report, like commentating on the football or whatever.
Preferably not. No, I think AI will help different things. BBC's looking at it in a lot of ways at the minute, but I hope certainly for next generation, football sport in general is still going to be huge in this part of the world. There's still going to be an appetite for it. We still get really good figures in terms of people interacting with what we do. So I think as long as the general appetite for sport doesn't fall off, and obviously it depends what with the BBC and the charter renewal and everything else, there should be an appetite for it. What that looks like in reality, I don't know. There's loads of different aspects we just mentioned, but I think hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood and all that as long as there's a big appetite for it locally, then we'll be able to do what we do in some format for however long we can do it.
Who do you enjoy interviewing the most? Past or present, doesn't matter which.
Oh, we've had some real characters. I mean, Chris Wilder's always fascinating to interview. Is the easiest stock answer.
I went to the Green On Awards.
Okay, the Star Awards.
Star Awards.
Yeah.
Probably about 6-7 years ago. It was when Darren Ferguson was at Doncaster, and they clearly didn't want to be there. Darren Ferguson and Wilder didn't want to be there, and they were like literally out the building within about sort of 10 minutes afterwards, and it was a very frosty atmosphere. I think it was the season. It was the COVID. It was after COVID because United had sort of like obviously flying high, and then COVID came, and then it was like back end of the season. So I think Wilder just wasn't having it. And the compare was the guy who used to be the championship compare. Goatee beard, skinhead on Football Focus. I don't know what he's called. But he was giving Wilder a bit of grief, and Wilder just
You have to watch what you say around him, though, don't you?
You get to know him a bit.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we're lucky that we've got to know him a bit now.
Yeah.
There's still the odd interview where he goes off on a tangent you don't expect, and that's the thing about the big characters. Like we just had Steve Evans back on the patch, who certainly divided opinion more widely. I think it's fair to say. We had a little kind of ding dong at Leyton Orient early this season. and sometimes you just never know what you're going to expect. But that's the point of it. You've got to go in with an idea of these are the topics I want to cover, this is what I want to do, but equally you've got to listen to the answers and pivot. And if they say something that's interesting, let's explore that second.
So, Chancery, by any chance?
I've been at fans forums with him.
Yeah.
And we'd love the chance.
He's not having it, is he?
No, it's who knows what will happen with Sheffield Wednesday at the minute. There's so many questions.
Do you think Wednesday, from where they are now, are they? Because I say that they are, but I'm not as knowledgeable about the game as you. But are Wednesday in a worse position now than when he took over from Manchester?
No, I'd probably say they're in a similar position, which is a shame because he's put hundreds of millions of pounds into the club. And with additional levels, additional people around him at the club, it could have been a real success story. They were a game away from getting promoted in his second season, which was an amazing achievement. And everything unravelled for years after that. Danny Brill's obviously done an amazing job over the last couple of years, had a knocking on the playoffs this year. You just worry now with Danny Brill's future, with the players' future, with protests happening against the ownership, what the club's going to look like at the end of the summer, what the squad's going to look like, and whether they can continue the momentum forward. At the minute, you worry with the decisions that have been made and how the owners acted over the years. The fear is that things start going backwards again, and it would be a real shame because the city needs two football teams doing well. We've seen it with Sheffield United in the Premier League. If United and Wednesday could both get up, it'd be phenomenal for us as a station, it'd be phenomenal as a city. Would put Sheffield back on the map, would drive a lot in terms of business, tourism, industry, everything else. Football is such a driver for all that. So Sheffield United in a good spot, could go up this year. Hopefully Wednesday things don't implode this summer, and as a minimum can maintain being a vaguely stable mid-table championship club next season. If not pushing on, very tough league. There's just a lot of questions.
What's your favourite ever game you've commentated live on? Best game?
Oof. There's quite a few. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the Rotherham EFL trophy win at Wembley. Just because it was my first Wembley commentary. Rotherham won, and I got to call the winning goal in a Wembley Cup final. You know, when you're kind of mapping out your career and some things to tick off, that was definitely up there. That was definitely up there. I've commentated on a few Steel City derbies now, which are just amazing occasions to be a part of. I've done various playoff games. You just enjoy. Look, the big games don't come around that often, and you never know quite when the games are going to come. But I've been lucky enough now to commentate at Wembley. I did the Chesterfield playoff final when they lost on penalties as well. Amazing days. Amazing days. And when you kind of think you're there, you feel part of it. That's one of the best parts of the job. You feel part of the game. It was always one of the attractions of this. It was, if I couldn't play, how can I be involved? And you feel involved. You've got a role. You're part of the theatre and the magic and the drama and everything else. And when you hear your commentaries going round on social media or being played out on the radio, it's like, that's pretty cool. And they still get that buzz. So the Wembley games are definitely ones that come back to. There's been some pretty good.
Might be another one round the corner.
Maybe.
I was going to say, did you say you'll be going to Wembley? Will you be commentating?
Who knows? I mean, there's quite a few of us that work here. Everybody always wants to do the big games. If I do, great. If I don't, so be it.
Is that names out of a hat for a final or not?
No, it depends. I mean, look, we try and team and label it as best as we can during the season and try and be as fair as we can. But everybody's had big games. You know, we've all in part commentated on one of the playoff semi-finals. You all want to do it because that's why you're in the game. But in whatever sense, there'll be some kind of hosting, there'll be some kind of presenting, there'll be some kind of commentating, and we'll enjoy the day.
Yeah, definitely. I take it football heaven, does it go on throughout the summer?
It does. We kind of morph into what we call summer sport, where we still cover football, we still talk about the new signings, we still get guests on, we still get callers on, but we also play some music, and we cover a lot of the other sports that we still cover during the year, but we're able to just give a bit more time to. So a bit of speedway, some ice hockey, some basketball, some rugby league, some cricket, whatever it is. So much going on.
I'm trying to get Mark Aston on the podcast because it's his 40th year.
Yeah, fascinating bloke. Fascinating bloke. And really tricky year as well. But the Eagles are in a much better state of health than they were, which has been great to see them back up because they've been in some dark places.
And if people want to get involved with the walking charities, it's at Walking's Brilliant.
Yeah, Walking's Brilliant is that one. At Prostate United is the running challenge. So check out both of them. There's bits online as well. Walking's great for your mental health. Yeah. So get out there, go and see the peaks, go and enjoy.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you to
Just before we wrap things up, with now what you know about the podcast, who do you think we should be interviewing? Maybe somebody we don't know about that you know.
Wow.
And don't say Wilder.
No, I won't say Wilder for you. I'll come up with some names as well. In terms of sporting people, somebody like, say, Clinton Woods, maybe.
We've been
from
Clinton's had a tough year, I think.
Yeah, but some boxing characters, always characters, some like Kellerby, interesting.
We're in talks with Kel.
He's a fantastic guy. Well, keep knocking on the doors because there's people that we've tried to get on and haven't. Nick Matthew, have you had Nick on yet? Former world squash champion. We've had him on as a guest. He's a very interesting bloke. And he's normally very good with stuff and great character. So I think Nick could be, bearing in mind he's somebody that has been at the very top of their sport. Nick could be a good guest for you.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for watching today's episode. We'll be back soon. Take care and see you soon.